Hello, my name is Andy. Today's article is Definition and Criteria of Re-election and By-election. I will read you the article and present my questions. Article. In South Korea, mayors and governors will be elected in local elections on June 1st. Furthermore, in some regions, by-elections to elect member of the constituency's National Assembly are also expected to be held. Let's take a look at what a by-election is and how it's being implemented now. The first chapter. What is a re-by election? A re-by election combines the results of a re-election and a by-election. Re-election refers to holding an election once again. It is held when no candidates ran in the preceding election, the election was invalid, the election resigned or the elected resigned or died before the start of the term, or the election was invalidated for violating the Public Official Election Act, among other reasons. By-elections, unlike re-elections, are held when an elected candidate resigns or dies after the start of the term and loses his or her post. In Korean, the word by literally means to fill in a void. In the event of a resignation, death, or loss of position, a by-election is held. Re-election or by-election will not be held if the term of the elector is less than 1 year. Then, when will the re-by-election be held? It was held twice a year, last Wednesday in April and October, until 2015, but it is until 2015, but it is only held once a year, first Wednesday in April, with the advent of the 2015 law. In years like this year, when there was a presidential election, local election, and parliamentary elections, it is held with these elections at the same time. The second chapter is Problems of Re-by-election. The re-by-elections that are being held together with the local election are all the re-by-elections for the National Assembly members. The constituencies that hold re-elections are as follows. But I'll omit the areas and the reason. A number of concerns have been expressed about the re-by election. For starters, elections are expensive. Election preparation, ballot paper copying, and personnel hiring all costs a lot of money. Second, it contradicts the majority view. There is an argument that if the electors elected by the voters commit illegal acts or resign for their own honor, such as running for president or regional government head, they betray the voters who trusted and elected them. Third, it was used as a tool for political revival by politicians. Pol- politicians. In the case of the second candidate uh, of Gyeonggu Incheon in this re-by-election, former Gyeonggi Governor Lee Jae-myung, who lost the presidential election on March 9, runs for office, and the first candidate of Bundang-gu, Seongnam, the transition chairperson An Chol-soo, is running. There seems to be a strong argument to be made that re-by-elections are most utilized as a weapon for politicians, political revival rather than to represent the needs of people. Now I will answer the questions. The first question is, what important event is expected to take place on June 1st in South Korea? In South Korea, mayors and governors will be elected in local elections on June 1st. But in some regions, the regions are going to do the re-by-election because I think there are six regions. It's first Sosong Daegu and Incheon, Seongnam, Wonju, and Hyeochanggun, and Changwon-si, and Jeju-si. These are the regions that are going to do the re-by elections. The second question is, what is a re-by election according to this week's article? A re-by-election is a compound word by re-election and by-election. A re-election is an election. It's re means to do um, again, and re-election does the election one more time because the election was invalid. The elected resigned or died before the start of the term, etc. But it has to be before of the term. And in like instead of the re-election, there is a by-election. A by-election, it's not really like a re-election, but it's like a re-election, but a by-election needs to start the term. The term must be started. So it's like A. There is a person, and it's a Busan's mayor, but the mayor died before the mayor died before the term. Then we're going to do a re-election, but it's the mayor started the term um and the started the term. Then we're going to do a by-election, but in by-election the term um it it needs to leave 1 year. So I mean that the term of the elector must be less than a year to do a by-election. The last question: do you think elections are too expensive to hold and thus should not be held as frequently as there are now? Tell us your opinion. Even though they cost a lot of money, I think we should do the election as now. It's because South Korea is a democratic country, and a democratic country needs to do an election. And that's all. It's all for the questions. This was my presentation, and thank you for listening, and goodbye.